Hello, everyone, and welcome to the newly christened Nerd Bucket podcast. I am Jimbo of YouTube's The Jimbo Channel. That gentleman right there is Tyler from YouTube's Metroids Primed. And this, like I said, is the Nerd Bucket podcast, formerly known as the Game On podcast. Little quick explanation, guys. We made a little boo-boo last week. Got a little ahead of ourselves when we kind of took the Game On podcast, which, again, I'll kind of admit I was a little bit surprised that someone hadn't thought of that already, but as it turns out, they have. And before we get into any legal entanglements or nerd battles or anything like that, Game On Podcast, we apologize. Weren't trying to crowd your space, so we thought we'd rename it the Nerd Bucket because, well, we're going to talk about nerdy shit and just put it all in the big fat bucket and hand you your weekly helping of awesome. Tyler, buddy, how are you doing this week, sir?
Doing great, man. I don't know how the weather is up in Washington area, but it's hot down here. It's in Memphis. It's about 100 degrees every day. So
it is blazing here right now.
It's good weather to be inside, play some video games, watch movies, doing all that.
Absolutely.
And that's about all I've been up to this week.
So what games have you been playing this week?
This week, I've been playing a lot of Hearthstone. It's a great card game. I don't know if you've ever played any Magic the Gathering, but it's a card game on iPad, Android, and it's actually on computer too. It's a free-to-play game. It's been out a while, but it's basically a more streamlined version of Magic the Gathering. Mm-hmm. I actually enjoy it a lot more. It's quicker. You can do daily quests every day and get coins. You can use your coins to buy packs. Of course, they've got the in-app purchases where you can actually buy packs of cards and stuff. But it's actually one game that you can legitimately play for free, and you can actually buy the expansions using the coins that you get from your daily quests. But I've been playing a lot of Hearthstone this week. I actually picked up a new game for my 360. It was published by Bethesda, and that game's Star Trek Legacy. It's a really cool game. It's kind of getting pretty rare for the 360. It had a pretty limited release as far as how many discs they printed of it, because it wasn't I'll say that the reviews weren't great for it, but going back and playing it now, it goes through like every period of Star Trek. You start out playing as Captain Archer. It's actually voiced by Scott Bakula. And it has pretty much all of the original voice acting from the captains in the Star Trek series. And been playing through some of those missions. It's pretty cool. You can actually also set up kind of mock battles. You can choose the Romulans, the Klingons, the Borg, Vulcans, pretty much anything.
Awesome.
And play multiple ships and stuff like that. It's really, really cool game. Also been playing a lot of Muramasa this week on my Vita. That's a really cool beat 'em up by Treasure. I don't know if you've ever played Dragon King on. It came out on PS3 and Vita, and Treasure's developed a lot of great games on. Let's see, on Sega Genesis they did like Dynamite Headdy and several other like really good games, but really been a fan of theirs for a long time. And this is a really cool game, like hand-drawn animation. Basically looks like it's painted on the screen.
Nice.
Really pretty. And the last game I've been playing is Onimusha Warlords. And Onimusha is basically survival horror set in feudal Japan. Capcom made it, and it's a really good game. I'm playing the version on the original Xbox, and it got a rename for it called Jinma Onimusha, and it's actually got some like added stuff into it, but it's a really cool game. But I'm finding that this new past couple of decades of or past two generations of systems have actually made me a weaker gamer because I'm going back playing this game and I'm finding it incredibly hard,
Yeah, I can
now to
imagine.
play. And I don't know what it was. I remember playing it back in the day and just that like set perspective. You know, we I know you love. You told me you love the not Metroid, the Resident Evil games,
Hmm.
and it's that pre-rendered background. You're kind of wandering through, um, fighting monsters and stuff, but it's so hard to control your character now. Because we're so used to that, the camera following you around and having more of a virtual experience in the games.
Hmm.
And going back now and playing it is so tough, but I always love that game, so I'm gonna try and slog through that
Nice.
no matter how hard it is. But that's pretty much all I've been playing this week. What about you, buddy?
I've been playing jack shit. I literally have not played 5 minutes of a single video game all week, mainly because of just coordinating the podcast and all the other YouTube stuff that I've had going on this week. I am extremely video game deprived, and that's something that I plan on rectifying this coming week in a big, big way. I'm looking forward to playing the new Wolfenstein, sitting down finally playing Watch Dogs, and definitely playing some more Payday, and definitely some retro.
Nice.
Always got to get some retro in there. So, movies and
Yeah.
TV, or
Uh,
I'm sorry.
yeah. Did you go see Ant-Man this week?
I did. I saw it yesterday, actually.
Oh,
In my
nice.
local mom and pop theater that has like a movie theater cafe with lazy boys, and you can get a beer and stuff. It's. I'm so spoiled now. It's like the only way I ever want to watch a movie these days. So what did you think of it?
I actually really enjoyed it. I was kind of nervous when I first heard that Paul Rudd was going to play Ant-Man.
Hmm.
And, I guess it was more just because, I'm so used to him playing a lot of the comedic roles.
Right.
And I knew, a lot of Marvel movies now, they want that aspect of humor
Hmm.
mixed with action and all that. But I was just, I was hoping it wasn't to the point that it was goofy. And it definitely was funny,
Yeah.
but it seemed to be that perfect mix of seriousness, action, and definitely the comedy aspect to it. But what do you think about it?
I absolutely loved it. I thought it was almost like this maybe intentional, probably unintentional metaphor how the scale of the movie itself was small, much like the character himself can shrink. I mean, because coming off something like the Avengers, this is the first Marvel movie after that. It's he's the smallest of the heroes, and his battle against the quote unquote supervillain is also infinitely smaller. But I kind of like that because it's like a heist movie. It wasn't like destroying New York or anything like that. It was just a guy like battling, for his family and stuff like that. He's an ex-con and he's trying to, win back the approval of his ex-wife and his daughter and stuff, and just be a good dad, and at the same time, stay on the straight and narrow, and Marvel kinds of shit starts to happen. So I mean,
Right.
I really liked it. I think that they handled it incredibly well. I could see Adam McKay's hand in the script. He's one of the big writers who works with Judd Apatow a lot of the times, and he's done a bunch of comedies, including with Paul Rudd. And he's worked with Seth Rogen and the rest of those guys. You could definitely see a lot of his jokes kind of creeping its way in the material, just for that added sense of levity, action beat levity, which is really what makes a good popcorn flick. But no, I thought Paul Rudd did an absolutely amazing job. I thought the way that they handled it wasn't cheesy at all. Um, the spoilers, really quick spoilers. The appearance of Falcon, I thought was really cool. Just to kind of tie it into the Avengers when he's dropping out of the plane, and I see that it's the new Avengers facility. He's like, "You got to be shitting me!" I thought that was so awesome. Just the wink winks here and there, and I knew there was going to be something. I mean, it's a Marvel movie. They're always going to tie it into the bigger universe. But what did you think about the final credit sequence, meaning the one at the very very end?
All right. Well, I
Spoilers,
messed up.
spoilers.
Well, there's no spoilers for me because I completely missed it.
Okay.
I thought that the one that was like midway through the credits was the last one.
You fucked
And
up,
then, of
dude.
course, I know I messed up. The one time I don't stay till right at the end, and there's something at the very end, but
Do you want me to tell you about it, or you want me to zip it?
I've already read it, but
Okay.
if you want to talk about it, yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm pretty sure I know what this ties into. So obviously the next Marvel tentpole is going to be Captain America 3, which is Civil War, based upon one of my personal favorite Marvel runs of comics. I've actually got the original series signed by Steve McNiven, who wrote it, and it's basically just about the reality of what it would be like to live in a world with superheroes. That they're not perfect. There's going to be consequences, and sometimes innocent people are going to get killed. And what happens if the public outcry turns against them? And the federal government has to step in and basically start regulating these people with the Registration Act. And it was a really big to do in the Marvel universe. Like the Avengers, the X-Men, the Fantastic Four, they're all kind of coming together on this thing. And excuse me, it basically divides the heroes right down the middle, where you've basically got Captain America leading one camp who's anti-registration, and Iron Man on the other side who are pro-registration. Another quick spoiler there, guys. One of the big things that come out of that is Peter Parker's Spider-Man reveals himself to the world. He reveals his identity to the public in an effort to try and calm both sides, because he's buddies with Cap and he's buddies with Tony, and he's just like, guys, seriously, we need to talk about this. So he goes in front of a press conference and he takes off his mask and reveals to the world who he is. So it was a really, really big deal in the comics, and I'm really glad that they're bringing that to life in Captain America 3. So what does this have to do with the end? Okay, so at the end, you basically see Captain America and Falcon, and they find Bucky Barnes with his hand, the Winter Soldier, with his hand basically caught in a vice. And I'll paraphrase a little bit, but they basically make mention that, we should call Stark about this, and he's like, even if we did, he wouldn't believe us. If this was done like 3 days ago, this would have been simpler. So my guess is this is 3 days after the Superhero Registration Act passes, meaning these guys are basically on the lam. They're outlaws. And Falcon says, I know a guy, so my guess is he's going to bring in Antman to shrink down the Winter Soldier so he can pull his arm out of the vice. That would make sense. So, Ant-Man and Falco kind of have like a, little bromance thing kind of going on. And it's pretty obvious, at least to me at the end of the movie, that Ant-Man's going to be anti-registration. It would make sense based upon the character that this wouldn't seem lawful to him. One of my favorite scenes in any comic book ever is actually from the Civil War run, where Captain America is basically on the Shield helicarrier, and one of the girls who's actually in the movie, I'm forgetting her name. She's played by the chick from How I Met Your Mother. Kobe Smulders plays her. She was a Shield agent, then she works for Iron Man now. But anyways, Maria Hill. She eventually becomes the director of Shield because Nick Fury, they think he's dead and stuff. So she basically takes over, and this whole thing is her idea. And she's questioning Captain America and saying, like, who do you have like locked down on this? Because he's basically like the peacemaker, trying to keep both sides happy here. And he's going through the list of the people that he's got signed on, and he's like, I don't know about Luke Cage, that may be a different. And she's like, well, I mean, you can handle him, right? And he's like, excuse me? And she's like, you can handle him, right? Like if things go south. And he's like, what are you talking about? This isn't lawful. This isn't a law yet. This is just your policy. This hasn't been passed by Congress. And she's like, it's like Congress isn't making the rules on this. I am. And he's like, no. He's like, I'm not doing this. This has not been passed by Congress. This isn't the law. He's like, if you want to do this, then fine. Put me on the floor in front of Congress. Let me speak to them personally. But this means I serve America, not you. And basically she pushes him, and there's this one panel that I will never forget where he's just got this look in his eyes and he knows what he's going to have to do. And he's like, damn you for making me do this. And he just stomps ass on like the entire Shield battalion, like single-handedly, and like freaking free dives out of the helicarrier. And after that, he's basically, fugitive number one. He's the most wanted man in America because he's an outlaw. So I'm super stoked to see that unfold in the third Captain America movie. I'm honestly more excited to see that than I am to see the Infinity War. I know that sounds really
that's
weird.
Gonna be a darker chapter to the Marvel.
It is, because
series.
they're fighting. Like, they're not all on the same team. Like, you're going to see Iron Man and Captain America vehemently disagree about something to the point where it comes to blows. Plus, you get Black Panther, and all this other cool shit, and it eventually sets up the Infinity War, which is perfect.
Um, Before we get too far away from Antman,
Sure.
Paul Rudd was actually on Howard Stern this week, and he was saying that when Stan Lee came to the set, that he was saying that how excited he was that Ant-Man was actually getting a movie
Yeah.
because he, one, was one of his favorite characters, but two, he was glad that there was actually a movie because in the comics he said it was so hard to actually show the scale of how small he was because the panels, wouldn't allow, everything to be expanded out to where, you could see the scale from of him to something else,
Right.
that was always very limiting, as far as the illustrations go. So I thought that was a really interesting little tidbit. And Paul Rudd did actually talk about filming on Civil War, so he for sure is going to be in that. So
Definitely. I can't wait to see it, man.
yeah.
That's definitely going to be a serious event next year. I'm really looking forward to it.
Well, did you see the new James Bond trailer that was released this week?
Yes.
That looks amazing. I don't know if how big of a fan you are of the Daniel Craig James Bond, but I love this iteration of James Bond. The taking him back to reality a little bit more, making it more gritty and less gadgets. Although it looks like we're going to start seeing some of the gadgets introduced into this movie. But how cool is it that Christoph Waltz is going to be the bad guy in this movie?
I know. There seems to be so much debate as to who he's actually playing, and somebody caught a frame or two that where he shows up in the trailer where he's wearing a jacket that looks almost identical to Ernst Blofeld's jacket. And given that it's very obvious in the trailer that he's the head of Spectre, and to the best of my knowledge, Ernst Blofeld in the James Bond mythos, he's always been the head of Spectre. Like there's never been anybody but him. And I have a feeling that his character name, if you IMDb this shit, is probably just a pseudonym, and it'll be revealed, that's not my real name. My name's Ernst Stavro Blofeld. And I think Christoph Waltz is absolutely perfect for this role. Because he's so good at being a villain. I mean, it's just he's so good at being ruthless. And on the same token, since you asked if I was a fan of Daniel Craig as James Bond, I think Skyfall and Casino Royale are absolutely as good as any of the Sean Connery movies. I think that those go toe to toe with them, and in some ways surpass them, because, like you said, it's more grounded in reality. Like it's going back to the James Bond being cold and ruthless, which is what I always liked about Sean Connery. Like, I mean, yeah, he's a ladies' man, but he has like no compunction about taking out a bad guy, which is what I really didn't like. About Roger Moore, is that he was more of the lover, not the fighter. I'm like, that's not the character, man. Like, I've read several of the original Ian Fleming novels. Daniel Craig is actually really close to the way he's described in the book, as far as just how he operates, like the high cheekbones and stuff like that. I mean, he's even got that part. So I think that anyone criticizing him at this point hasn't seen Skyfall and hasn't seen Casino Royale, because that's, in my opinion, two of the quintessential Bond movies, like where they just absolutely killed it. And I know that this one won't be any exception. Like this is going to be Daniel Craig's Goldfinger, where I mean, like you said, he gets the supercar in this one. Like we finally get to see Q Branch, up and running, where they actually give him a prototype that he can use. And dude, he's taking on Spectre. I mean, what more do you want? And Ray Fiennes is M. Like, it doesn't get any better than this. I mean, this is as good as it gets. This is going to be awesome. I mean, it's Sam Mendes has done it twice, and both Bond movies he's made have been fucking amazing. So, I'm yeah, I'm on board. I'm a fan.
Yeah, it just I know I think he's got like one more movie after this that he signed on for, but I'd like to see more with him in it. Just five to me, I don't think is going to be enough. Personally, I'm pretty sure I'm gonna have to have more. But I also saw this week that Terminator Genesis wasn't doing that great,
That doesn't surprise me.
and this is another. Looks like it's going to be a bomb for Arnold, and ever since he started making movies again, he's just having a hard time making the comeback. It seems.
Yeah,
I don't think he's had a very successful one.
he hasn't.
By any chance, have you seen Maggie with him in it? It's
No,
a
I have
zombie
not.
movie.
Have you? Is it any good?
I haven't either. I want to check that out, but I've heard some good things about that,
Okay.
and I'd like to see that, but
I did
I
see
haven't yet.
Sabotage, the one where he's the head of the DEA, like elite squad. That was actually pretty
Mm,
good.
okay, I'll
I
have to
actually
check that
enjoyed
out.
that. It's a David Ayer movie, who's the guy behind the upcoming Suicide Squad flick, and
Okay,
it was really good actually. It's very gritty and very realistic, and it's just corruption and everything else, inside the Drug Enforcement Agency and all these other things, them dealing with these, you know, absolute assholes, south of the border, these rich drug kingpins cutting off people's heads and crap. It's a very gritty, realistic look at drug enforcement. So I highly
okay,
recommend it. I thought that one was pretty good.
yeah, it does sound pretty good.
Yeah.
And let's not forget that Pixels came out this week.
Which neither of us have seen. And
Right, right.
we're probably going to go see it just so we can shit on it. But I have not heard one good thing about anyone. I'm not normally one who buys into the hype like either way. But I mean, even fans of this stuff are like, this movie's absolute shit. I can't declare a moratorium on it, guys, until I actually see it. I'm not one of those types who's just going to be like a lot of other podcasters out there that actually are just like, I hate Zack Snyder, like this movie's going to suck. I haven't seen it, but it's going to fucking suck anyway. Well, guys, no. You're not going to get any of that here. We're going to wait until we actually see the movie, and then we'll tell you what it thinks. And if it sucks, then we'll tell you it sucks.
Yeah, I think I'm actually going to see it tonight. I saw the Rotten Tomatoes review of it, the composite score, and that was pretty bad. I think it was below 20%. So
Ooh,
yeah,
that
so
is
it's
rough.
looking like it might be another stinker. But like you said, we can't really judge it until we get out and see it. But here lately, it just seems like Sandler might have lost his touch. What's funny? I don't know if he's just been out of the game so long or what, but I'd say maybe the last good movie that he's put out that was semi funny would be maybe 50 First Dates or something like that.
That
I mean, it's
was
been a
kind of
long
funny.
time.
Yeah, I
And
just
did The
think that,
Longest Yard come out after? And I mean, that was basically a remake of the movie,
yeah,
so
it
you
just seems
couldn't.
like the same formula that he has in every movie. I think people are simply tired of.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
just kind of worn out its welcome, and it's kind of 90s, early 2000s, and it never really evolved into what, the Judd Apatow, kind of comedies today, which seem to be kind of ruling the roost, like the in your face, very honest kind of comedies, like the one with Amy Schumer that just came out recently. Apparently is doing pretty well, where it's just that, what did you do for charity? Well, I slept with a lot of fat guys in college. Just that kind of,
right.
unabashed, abrasive humor seems to be status quo these days. But if I can inject just a little tiny mini review here, just something I want to plug real quick. I watched It Follows last night, which was you almost unanimously praised, even on Rotten Tomatoes. I think it was like a 98% approval rating, one of the highest scores that any movie has ever gotten. I gotta say that it lives up to the hype. It was one of the better movies I have seen this year. It wasn't perfect. I had a few gripes with it, but as far as originality in horror movies, this is the most original horror movie I have seen in at least 5 years. I mean, it was not doing anything else that anyone was doing. It just did its own thing. And it really reminded me of the horror movies from the 80s, like an uncheesified version of an 80s horror movie. Like the score and stuff kind of takes you back to the 80s. It's all atmosphere, almost zero gore, and just a lot of suspense, but it really keeps you on the edge of your seat. If you haven't checked it out, guys, seriously, you like horror movies, watch It Follows. I fucking loved it. Thank
Did
you.
you get it from Redbox or
I just
did you
watched it
actually buy it?
just on demand.
Okay.
So you can watch it on Google Play, your local cable provider, your Xbox. Spend $5.99. Check it out. It's a really good movie. Has a really cool ending.
Okay.
So what's
Well,
next?
you want to move on to news from this week?
What kind of news are we talking about, bro?
Let's do some stupid news
All right,
first.
we can do stupid news. All right. So we'll call this guy slash these guys like the absolute fucking assholes of the week. Okay, so we're still getting all the details in on this, but we do know at least a handful of facts. One would be that we have a couple guys who apparently broke into a house to steal a quote unquote PlayStation. We actually do not know which exact model of PlayStation they were going after, but I think they'd probably be going after the PlayStation 4. I think we can probably assume that.
Let's at least hope so.
Yeah, I mean,
I
like
mean, if they're going
first
after
gen.
PlayStation 1, they've got
If they're
problems.
going after PlayStation 1, we're not going to talk about this anymore. So we're just going to assume, for the sake of our own sanity, that it's a PlayStation 4, that they're at least getting the latest, greatest, shiniest toy. Okay, so
Right.
Tyler, let's step outside of our comfort zone here and say, if we were both criminals, if you were breaking into the house, breaking in any house to steal something, what would you arm yourself with?
You'd have to bring a gun. I mean, I would think.
At least, or like a
Yeah.
taser gun or something, like something.
Right. Right.
Well, I can tell you the last thing that I would arm myself with would
What's
be
up?
a stick. And I'm not talking about like a broom handle or like a baton, no daredevil shit here. I'm talking about like the kind that you go outside in your front yard and break off a fucking branch. That kind of stick. So two guys with sticks broke into a house to get a PlayStation 4.
Wow.
I got to admit, if this is some kind of like crackpot legal defense, it's fucking brilliant. Because I mean, they can't say like, these were armed thugs. The jury's going to be like, that's armed? Like they didn't have a gun or a knife. These guys had sticks. Like a
Right.
fucking 10-year-old's gonna come after you with a stick. You're gonna put them in jail? So maybe they're really brilliant and we shouldn't be calling it stupid news. Maybe they're just so smart that we think they're dumb. But no, no. These are a couple of
Wow.
complete idiots. Why?
That's
It's
terrible.
always the PlayStation. I don't get it. Anytime you go into like a high crime area, they're always after the PlayStation. It's like, I don't get it. So congratulations, two idiots armed with sticks to get a PlayStation 4 Darwin Award winners right there.
Our idiots of the week.
Yes, idiots of the week for sure.
I was actually reading an article this week that Michael Jackson was actually in the running to play Jar Jar Binks in
I
the
heard
Phantom
that.
Menace, and
What the fuck? It couldn't have made it
you know,
worse. That's all I'm gonna say. It could not have made it worse.
well, that's what I was going to ask. Like, could the movie have actually been worse with Michael Jackson as Jar Jar Binks?
Are you kidding me, dude? If we saw Jar Jar Binks like breaking out some Michael Jackson moves, that would have been awesome. That would have been like, okay, this is like the most anachronistic movie I've ever fucking seen, but I don't care. Like if he's like, how, like doing that, that would be
Right,
awesome,
right.
man. I'd be like, dude, Jar Jar's my favorite character.
Also, this week I saw that Nintendo is shutting down the Wii U TV
I heard
next
that.
month, and it looks like they're starting to slowly close up shop on some things
Am I the only
on the
person that
Wii
had
U.
no idea that existed?
Honestly,
I've
I
never
never
heard
used
of
it
it.
personally, but
I had no
you know,
idea that something. I mean, I'm not shocked that something like that existed, but I seriously had no idea until I saw that.
they have a lot of, they had some of those things on the Wii
Hmm.
that were not utilized very much, and I think a lot of these companies, including Microsoft and Sony,
Hmm.
introduced a lot of things in this past console generation that the consumers didn't necessarily want. I would love to have been in some of those consumer groups to, and that do the testing on all that stuff, and
Hmm.
just try and figure out like who was it that actually asked for a TV function on the new Wii U, who chose the name for that, who said that they needed another Kinect on Xbox, because I mean Microsoft had already abandoned the Kinect on the 360.
Right.
The only reason that was popular is because when it first came out, it sold several million copies of the Kinect. It sold a lot of hardware for them. But and then the PlayStation with the PlayStation I don't think that's being utilized anymore. So
Or the move.
definitely if they would I mean, it's just obvious that they need to focus on the games.
Yeah.
All these companies did,
It all
and
comes down to games these days. It really does.
it makes me wonder like who actually tested a lot of these systems and stuff, and who gave the input because it definitely isn't a gamer
No.
doing that. It's got to be just some random Joe off the street. uh, do we have any more news on your end?
That's all I got right now. Unless I'm forgetting something.
Uh, I was seeing this week that George R. Martin was making a comment on thinking how, or I guess he was saying that the Marvel villains in the Marvel movies were kind of bland, and he gave a few examples. He said that, as in like Ant-Man versus the Wasp, Spider-Man versus Venom, Iron Man versus the Ironmonger, and Abomination versus the Hulk. He's tired of seeing these battles between the villains and the heroes, where the villain and the hero has the same superpower.
Yeah.
He's ready to see people that have completely different powers fight. And
he's going to love Batman versus Superman then.
That and but he actually did call out Marvel on this. And I'm thinking maybe we'll start seeing some of this in Civil War, which we were just talking about.
Yeah.
So, and we actually saw some of it in the Avengers, where Iron Man and Captain America and Thor all were getting into it. I thought that was a pretty cool battle sequence.
Sure.
At the beginning of that movie, but I thought that article was pretty interesting. And George Martin definitely knows his villains. If you're a fan of Game of Thrones, I mean, he has some of the best ones out there, for sure. You were talking about the Resident Evil fan remake earlier.
Yes,
you want to talk about it?
Some? I would love to talk about that. Okay, so for any of you guys not in the know, there's basically a completely 100% fan-made HD remake of Resident Evil 2, where they've basically taken, I guess, the core coding and plugged it into a far superior game engine. So it's like Resident Evil 2 that kind of looks like Resident Evil 4 or 5, with everything scaled up, better character models, better textures, and things like that. I think it was originally supposed to be out like last year, but it got delayed, due to time and funding and stuff like that. But it's supposed to be coming out this year. I, for one, would absolutely love to play this. I think that Capcom needs to hire the guy that's doing this and let him like do some more Resident Evil stuff, like come up with a game, or at least help them with the upcoming games. I think it looks incredible, and Resident Evil 2, for my money, guys, of the original trilogy, is my favorite Resident Evil game. Because it's literally like you're in the shit of the zombie apocalypse, like you're on the streets as it's happening, as Raccoon City's being taken over, and that's why I liked it much more than the first one. Not that the first one's bad; that one's a cool game. This was just more like the influences of George Romero. I think were a lot more obvious in this one because it was a little bit closer to Dawn of the Dead, and Night of the Living Dead, and it just struck a chord in me. The two opposing storylines that you can play and stuff, and definitely replay value. And I'm looking forward to checking this one out. What do you think about it?
Resident Evil 2 is definitely one of my favorite Resident Evil games. I still have a place in my heart for Code Veronica. That's the very first Resident Evil game I ever played on the Dreamcast. Great game, but 2 definitely is right behind that for me. I think it's great, and I agree with you. Capcom should definitely hire this guy. I would love to throw some money at this game, as I'm sure a ton of other people were.
Sure.
But given Capcom's history here of late, I would think they'd probably do the exact opposite of what everybody else would think they should do. And I'm fully expecting by about the time that this game is ready for release, Capcom probably to send a cease and desist letter,
which is
to where it'll never see the light of day. But I mean, still, like, if the guy's pretty much done all the work, either, thank him and write him a check. I mean, you could write him a check for $100,000. I mean, you're easily going to make that money back if so if it works and all that, and sell it. I mean, they would still make a ton of money off that. If they had a finished game that they could release,
No,
But
I agree that HD remake that they did on Xbone and PS4 of the updated version of the originally remade Resident Evil 1 that they put out on GameCube, they redid it in 1080p,
hmm
was the fastest selling digital download game on a console in history. Like it was number one, like immediately when it came out. So obviously there's a market for this, and I think if they took that same approach to the second one, where they took this guy's game, maybe up the res, scaled it to 1080p, and released it, even if it's only in digital format on the consoles, I think people would love it. I would download that in a heartbeat,
yeah,
just
me
just to
too.
play it again. So I wish that they would go back and remake more of these in HD like they did with the original one on the GameCube. I was like, it's the same game. They didn't really fuck with anything. It's just better.
Right.
The visuals are better, the textures are better, just everything about it is better. So that in my opinion is an example of how you do a remake correctly. You don't fuck with the source material, and you improve the stuff that they couldn't have possibly fixed at the time just due to limitations of technology. The same could
Right.
be said for remaking a movie. Like you put in the stuff that they couldn't have overcome at the time. Just all the technical limitations. You fix all of that with modern technology. So, well, I guess we'll see what happens with this, man. I'm hoping Capcom doesn't get in the way, and I hope we get a chance to play it.
Right. And speaking of another older game, this I guess it was this past week that Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic 2 got an update, and this is 10 years after the release of the game. It's an official release, but I guess it's through Steam only. But wow, would I love to have an update for my Xbox version of Knights of the Old Republic? I've started to play that game several times, but I've been told just to not play it because there's so many bugs and glitches, like game breaking bugs, that just not to fool with it. But I've also heard that it's the best Knights of the Old Republic out of the two of them. So
What did the update entail? Like, what did they bring out?
I think they released like some new achievements and
Hmm,
several patches to fix some of the bugs and stuff like that. So
awesome.
I thought that was pretty cool. 10 years after the release, better late than never.
Yeah, no, I
Definitely
agree.
on that.
That sounds like something that Valve would do, like when they released that update for Left 4 Dead 2 of the fan-made campaign, and it was like 2 years or something after it had come out,
Right.
and they released it for pennies, because they never overcharged for a thing. Their DLC is like $5 or $6, where they could have easily charged like 10 or 15. So I wish there was more
Yeah.
companies out there like that.
Right. Right. I also saw this week that a Fallout anthology was announced for PC,
I heard about
and
that.
this basically comes with everything um, that ever came out for Fallout, including the new game.
Wow.
And I think it's for a decent price, and on top of all that, it comes out in a Fat Boy Nuke case. So
Nice.
I think they've got me again, Jimbo. We
Oh
talked about
God.
not needing all this crap, and here we go again.
Yeah, I think that this is a direct result of the success of the freaking Pip Boy. They're like, well, what else can we milk them for? What
Right.
about if we bring out a Fat Boy Nuke? Yeah, they'll buy that.
Oh yeah.
And there's some guy in the
Take my
back being like, I think we can go cheaper. Some guy behind the scenes like thinking about it's like, I think we can milk him for even more. You know, some brainiac in the back. So
well, it worked because
yeah,
I want it to.
if you get it, I gotta see that. That's
Yeah,
yeah,
it looks very cool.
awesome.
Well,
So, what else is new?
I've kind of got a little mystery segment here.
Hmm. So I honestly know nothing about this, guys. Tyler told me in advance that he was gonna drop like a mystery segment on me, and you guys would get my gen reaction. No bullshit. I have absolutely no idea what's about to come out of his mouth.
And one of our listeners actually wanted to know our opinion on these.
Okay.
And it's a very popular phenomenon happening in the Nintendo community right now. They're collectible.
I think I know where this is going.
All right. Me and Jimbo talked about this a while back about the Amiibos. And I said, Jimbo, are you planning on collecting any amiibos? And
No.
Jimbo said, no, hell no, not
No.
fooling with. And I was like, well, I see they've got a Samus version of a amiibo. I'm gonna have to get it. I collect Metroid stuff. There's so few stuff out here. So the other day,
Sell
I
out.
picked up I picked up my first amiibo, and it looks cool and all that. I'm not gonna take it out of the box, but if there's two things I collect, it's Metroid stuff, and I also collect Zelda stuff. And
Here
of
we
course,
go. I knew that
they
was
have
coming.
Zelda. They have Zelda amiibos. So I got the Link, and I also got Zelda
Oh
of that. And I was like,
God.
well, if I get Link, I've got to get the Toon version of
Oh, for
Link.
God's sakes, man. Shit. You're part of the
And
fucking
then
problem here.
to end the problem, I was at GameStop the other day, and I saw that there was a re-release of these, and it was one of my favorite games of all time, Earthbound. I had to get the
Oh
NES
God.
amiibo. So it appears that I'm knee deep in this phenomenon right now,
Oh,
Jimbo. I said I wasn't going to do it, other than the Metroid
traitor.
amiibos, but it looks like I've gotten several now, and I know that there's a Zero Suit Samus coming out this fall, so that'll be another one to add to the list of amiibos, and a Ganondorf. So
I can't do it,
so it
guys.
looks.
All right, tell you what. When there's a Bomberman amiibo, I will buy that one. That's it.
Um, one of our listeners basically wanted to get our thoughts on the whole amiibo craze right now.
Okay.
Um, like, do we think it's good? Do we think it's bad? Obviously, it's been very successful
hmm
for Nintendo, but what are our thoughts on amiibos?
I mean, I guess I can see it from a business perspective that it's very smart for Nintendo because they're like printing money with these things. I mean, amiibos and handhelds, like Nintendo is so in the black that it's just unbelievable. So, considering that they were having some financial troubles, at least on paper, I think that that's a really good idea. It's really smart business wise. However, let's be honest here, guys. They're basically creating a collector's market. And don't get me wrong, I think it's fucking brilliant because this is like to kids, it's like well, it's like a toy, but I have to get it for my video game. So, one is kind of useless without the other, so they have to get, both of these things. So all they're doing literally is just raking in more and more and more money. So from that perspective, Nintendo, bravo. I think it's great. I'll buy a Bomberman one and that's it. That's the only one I would ever fucking buy. It's just not my thing, guys. It's just not my thing. Not hating on anyone who does it. It's just not my deal.
Yeah, I'm not as much into it. I know I have these five here, but I'll personally probably only get a handful of the characters that I really love from Nintendo,
hmm
um, and I'm not going to go very far outside of that. I just don't have the space, and these things take up a lot of room if you take them out of the packaging and all that. Of course, it'd be a lot smaller, but I want to keep mine in the packaging.
hmm
I'm not planning on playing with them. They, to me, don't really have as much functionality in the games. I'm not playing a lot of games that use amiibos, so I don't really play a lot of Smash Brothers. I know that's going to probably scare a lot of people because that's the best game ever on Nintendo according to some people. Which I mean, that's to each their own. But it's not my favorite game from Nintendo. But
I love
I
Smash,
like
just for the record. If they're gonna get the hate, I want to make sure that I'm not in that
right.
camp. No, I love Smash Brothers. Anyways,
But
continue.
I like I like these that I have, but I don't see my collection getting a lot bigger than this.
Okay.
There's a couple others that I've seen, but just as far as like space in the game room, I don't have just a ton of space, to put these things everywhere.
I got you.
So they're cool, but in a I'm not going to go fight in Toys R Us, to get the latest, rare amiibo. I just don't have the time. I'm not especially with the reseller market as bad as it is right now,
Mm-hmm.
if you don't get something within like, 10 minutes of it coming out, like on GameStop or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
you're not going to get it. And of course, somebody's going to turn around on eBay and pump up the price, 4 or 5 times what it costs. And I just there's better stuff to spend your money on
Agreed.
than inflated Amibos. All these are pretty common. I got these, for what they cost on the shelf. So,
Well, I have a
but
couple of quick news bits, if you don't mind me interjecting just a little bit, just a couple little brief
all right,
things. Okay, so one quick nerd video game thing that I thought was cool. So one of the new guns from Doom 4, the soon-to-be released latest edition of the Doom franchise, I thought was really cool. It's called the Static Cannon. And basically, the details released on this are that it's like a slow-firing beam rifle that's literally powered by the static electricity around you. So the only way to charge it basically is to run. So when you stop running, like when you're holding still, it's actually even when you're walking, it starts slowly losing ammunition basically. So the only way to get this thing to work basically is to haul ass, which I thought was really incredible because it's not a gun that you can take your time with. Like you've got to be doing this like literally running and gunning. Like this is living up to the actual buzz phrase. That's adding a new gun to a Doom game. It's like what else are they going to come up with at this point? This is definitely a big departure from some of the other stuff, since it's literally like man powered. I guess you could say like the faster you can run, the more it gets charged. But looking forward to seeing that unfold. Another thing I wanted to kind of rant about. Okay, and Tyler apparently has a personal story that's going to make a perfect segue on this. So I'll tell my little news bit, and we'll let Tyler cut loose on this and just tell us all story time with Tyler. So Tyrese Gibson of the Fast and Furious series. He's been in the Transformers movies. Been in Baby Boy, which seems to be what Tyler and I remember him from. Also an accomplished singer, don't get me wrong, which is something he did before he was an actor. So there was some buzz going around the internet recently that he might be in the running to play Jon Stewart in the upcoming Green Lantern Corps movie. As previously announced by Warner Brothers, that instead of doing a standalone Green Lantern movie, they're going to do a Green Lantern Corps movie. Okay, I think that's a really incredible idea that's what they're doing. Instead of just focusing on one, they're going to focus on the team, that's brilliant. That's what they should be doing. So Tyrese goes on to explain that I think throughout the course of the last year, $6 billion were spent on people going to see him in movies. And that's his justification on him being a draw and why Warner Brothers should hire him and blah, 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 and all this other crap. Okay, Tyrese, I hate to call you out here, dude. I'm not knocking your success at all. You've definitely been in some very big movies. When it comes to Transformers and Fast and Furious, these movies are making shit tons of money, and that's fine and good. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that not everyone who went to see that movie was going to see you. As a matter of fact, I would say the huge, rather incredibly small minority of people were going to see that movie because you were in it. I'm going to say they were going to see giant robots fight and Vin Diesel and Paul Walker. That was probably 99% of the draw. Just guessing here, but that's probably pretty safe bet. And furthermore, guys, let's be honest here. We're talking about the guy who played Baby Boy. The villain in that movie was fucking Snoop Dogg. You really want him to play Jon Stewart, who is arguably the most intelligent of the Green Lanterns. The guy is a freaking architect. His constructs with the ring, according to Hal Jordan, are supposed to be the most intricate. Like, he builds things from the ground up down to the nuts and bolts. He's got that much minutia in his constructs because that's the way it appears in his head. In what fucking universe are we going to see Tyrese Gibson talk about, like, Art Deco and Art Nouveau and shit and not sound like an idiot? I mean, it's... I don't picture him being able to talk about that and not sound like a fucking moron. This would have to be someone at the level of Denzel Washington or something. I'm not suggesting him. He's a little bit old to play this, but a guy who can convey intelligence without sounding like he's reading from a fucking cue card.
right,
Like, yeah, man, that building over there, that's Art Deco. No, that's not what Jon Stewart is. He's not, yo, 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 yo. He's not that type of black guy. Like, this is the black dude who has a fucking degree from an Ivy League school. He talks like he's actually smart. Like he actually knows what he's doing. I mean, he's tough as nails, don't get me wrong. He's a former Marine, but this is the guy that like got himself out of the hood and made it, with higher education and crap. This would be, a Denzel or maybe Terrence Howard or somebody like that. There's a bunch.
I think
of
Terrence
people.
Howard would be a good choice for that.
He'd be an interesting Green Lantern. There's a bunch of guys that I would pick.
He's not very built, but
No.
but
he's a Green Lantern. Doesn't have to be.
Yeah, true.
It's all
true.
ring powered. So there's a bunch of different guys that I think would make really good Jon Stewarts. Long before I would even consider Tyrese. Like Tyrese would be like my backup to my backup to my backup to my backup before I even considered giving him an offer letter. So Tyrese, the internet, as much as you'd like to believe it, isn't blowing up saying that you're the number one choice. I don't know anyone that's a fan of the comic that would pick you first. I really don't. Just maybe the people that are fans of your movies, but anyone who gives a shit about this comic book and he's been reading Green Lantern since he was a kid would be like, fuck no. That's horrible. I mean, what's next? What is his girlfriend going to be fucking like Paris Hilton, the nuclear physicist or something? I mean, no, we're not going to do that, guys. So Tyrese, shut up. Stop it. Bad Tyrese. Okay, so moving right along.
Well, I actually had an experience with Tyrese. I guess it was my senior year of high school. I was part of the Question It campaign, the anti-tobacco campaign, and we actually did a concert, and he was the headliner. It was him and Maya opened up for him.
Okay.
And so, of course, like we're on the board, we actually chose these people to come do the concert. So, of course, like after the concert, we're all back there backstage. And Maya comes over, gets her picture with us, and we get to meet her, talk to her, and all of that. And Tyrese is like 30 or 40 minutes late.
Nice.
Showing up the concert. And so Maya like goes on longer than she actually has to kind of cover for the guy. And so he finally gets there. And it turns out he was looking for his platinum cell phone that he had lost. And that's why he was late to the concert. And, of course, we wanted to meet him, get our pictures with him, like Maya did with us. And he wouldn't even, he didn't have the time of day for us. Didn't even want to come meet us, anything. I mean, we're the people who chose him. I mean, of course, we didn't pay it out of our pockets, but we were on the board that, chose it. We could have easily had somebody else, come play the concert. So here we are responsible for this guy's paycheck that night and didn't have the time of day to meet us. So ever since then, I haven't really had anything for the guy. He was an asshole that night, and I hope he doesn't get it just strictly because he's an asshole. But maybe he's changed since then. I mean, it's been
nerd spite.
It's been a long time. It's been over 15 years. But the one time I had dealings with a guy, he was an asshole. So Maya, cool as shit, but Tyrese, asshole.
Yeah.
So that was my run-in with Tyrese.
Very nice. That was a good story.
But yeah, if you lose your platinum cell phone, it's going to ruin your whole day. Don't want to see anybody. Don't want to have anything to do with anybody. So
platinum cell phone. Jesus Christ.
Mm-hmm.
Take the dude out of the hood, but not the hood out of the dude, apparently. Jesus. Flavor Flav! So a couple quick news tidbits here. We mentioned last time we were talking about the Warner Brothers CW DC shows, particularly DC's Legends of Tomorrow, which is kind of like their anthology series that they're going to do, where it's going to be like, I think they said like 12 or 13 episodes a season, and it's not going to be like the supervillain of the week kind of thing. It's going to be episodic, meaning one big story arc where it begins and ends with each season, and people are going to come into the show, go off the show. It's going to be like a revolving, door of people going in and out of the show. And at the same time, apparently the producers of the show are saying that they're not afraid to kill off characters. They've kind of taken The Walking Dead and and Game of Thrones approach, where like pretty much nobody's safe, which I think is kind of becoming status quo for television these days because it takes a lot to surprise people. You almost have to adopt that, and you have to push those boundaries, and you have to break those rules just to keep people guessing. So I applaud them for that. I'm looking very much to this show with the whole elements of time travel and everything that this is going to incorporate. I think it's going to be really cool since it's such a departure from the other two shows. Second bit of news bits would be for all you Gem fans out there, like this guy right here. Anyone who's watched my channel knows that. I mean, I got co-host and co-star of Retro Game Hall, Retro Game Lounge Chuck to dress up in a pink drag wig just because we're such, fucking huge fans of this shit. So yeah, this is not going to make me see the movie any more than it was before. So I still think this is going to be turned. This is a movie that I'm going to shit on without seeing it, but I probably will go and see it just so I can come back and be like, I fucking told you this is a piece of shit. So apparently, the producers of those films have released some songs from the movies, and I use that with air quotes, that people can download and basically do a video through social media, Twitter, YouTube, whatever, and you can upload it, and if it's good, it might actually appear in the movie. I can already see how this is going to tie in, since Jem apparently is going to be a YouTube sensation in this movie, and this will be people like remixing and copying her and shit. Like I can already predict this crap. So that's probably how this is going to be, how it's going to tie in. And for a brief second, I thought about submitting Chuck and I's rendition of the Gem theme song, since I think that's one of the best limp-syncing videos in the history of YouTube. Personally, I know I'm biased because I'm in it, but I think it's amazing. I mean, it's two grown men singing a like 80s freaking teeny bopper, pop song with pink hair and shit, and we're totally nailing it epically. But here's the problem. As far as I know, that song, even though it's the Gem theme song, isn't in the fucking movie. So
Oh, that sucks.
I can't call this the Gem movie because, well, there are no holograms, there is no synergy. Gem doesn't even really have pink hair, and there are no misfits. How is that the fucking Gem movie? It's not. Like, you literally took everything out of the show. Not just bits and pieces, but everything out of the show, and just, it's Gem in name only. That
What's crazy is they could actually. We have the technology now to make the holograms.
Thank you,
I mean,
Tyler. Thank you.
Why would they not have the holograms now that we can actually do it?
Yes.
I mean, didn't they have a Michael Jackson concert and a Tupac concert and some of these other concerts, where the people were actually performing? I mean, of course they're not performing, but it looks real enough from a distance, that you would actually think that they were performing right there.
I don't think it would be too big of a stretch for audiences, and even if it was, so what? It's a fucking movie. Who cares? Of a woman who like suddenly comes into her father's millions, who is apparently like this brilliant inventor and computer genius, who invented this artificial intelligence supercomputer named Synergy, who's capable of projecting holograms on people and copying them perfectly and everything like that because it's smart and it can think. And Gem is kind of like her. It's the Superman to her Clark Kent. Grabs the earring, Showtime Synergy, boom. She's Gem. She's like, that's her alternate identity. In the age that we're living in, Tyler, with like comic books and superheroes and shit like that, how wouldn't that sell these days? I mean, that's literally, you're playing to the audience's wants right now. Like, this is the perfect time because all of us, from the 80s generation are grown up and shit, and we're all flocking to see these comic book movies. I just don't understand how you can fuck something like this up. This is unfuckable. Like, all you have to do is not mess with the source material too much and just make it over the top. They're like, well, that wouldn't work these days. Why wouldn't it work? It's supposed to be ridiculous. The show, even when it was on, was ridiculous. The catchphrase from the show is truly outrageous.
Right.
What the fuck? Like what don't you guys get about this shit? Anyways, to see more on that, guys, check out my Gem Rant video, the Gem Reel trailer, over on the Jimbo channel. Me and a black dude in a pink wig and drag. You'll love it.
Nice. Well, did you have any other news bits?
That is all I got for this week, dude.
We've got a couple of reader questions, and with that being said, please send us in any questions that you would like both Jimbo and I to answer.
Absolutely.
Or either one of us. We'd love to hear from you guys, see what you think about the podcast. Um, Also, we are going to try and get our podcast submitted for iTunes this week. We tried it last week. We had a few hiccups, but hopefully we can get it up for all of you people who use iTunes to subscribe to podcasts. We want to have that ready for you. But our first question comes from Green January on YouTube,
Mm-hmm.
and he wants to know our thoughts on the lack of physical games for the PS Vita, and also our thoughts on the state of Xbox One and PS4 right now.
I'll let you take over the Vita thing since I've never owned a PlayStation Portable in any capacity, so my opinion on that is pretty much zilch.
Okay. The Vita, I feel, is one of Sony's biggest blunders. From the day that was released, they have not advertised for it hardly at all. It's one of the greatest pieces of technology out today. The capabilities of it far exceed the 3DS. Just, the games that you can play on it. You almost can play perfect ports of PS3 games on your Vita. Amazing technology. I just wish it had been advertised more. I wish they would have focused on it a little bit more, because you definitely would have your hardcore gaming audience. I think it's a handheld for an adult. I've played some great games here in the past week, but it looks like PlayStation's pretty not PlayStation, but Sony has pretty much given up on the Vita. They've pretty much all but said that whatever games come out will just be ports. There won't be anything, I guess, developed strictly for the Vita. And I guess a lot of the stuff now is going to be downloads. And I heard at a investor conference not too long ago, the Vita is actually now considered one of Sony's legacy systems. So
Mm-hmm.
it's a disappointment. I love my Vita, but like I said, I just think it's really something that they completely dropped the ball on, because I remember when the Vita came out, and there just pretty much was no advertisement at all. Like, I didn't know it was out, other than reading like Kotaku or something like that. And I saw no TV advertisement, and the games are drying up for it. So I think Sony's really dropped the ball on the Vita.
Sounds
But
like it.
Jimbo, what do you think about the state of the Xbox One and the PS4?
That is an excellent question, Green January. Thank you so much for submitting it. This I definitely do have an opinion on. I think that the end of 2015, Sony better take notice, because I think Microsoft is done screwing around. I think they're really going to come out swinging for this fall and winter season. I mean, we've got, Gears of War Remastered. We have the next Halo game. We've got all these heavy hitters pretty much, Microsoft pulling out the big guns saying, like, we need to close the gap here and we need to do it quick. For anyone like me who got the Master Chief Collection and was incredibly appalled at the way 343 handled that game, and there is no excuse for that. I mean, like, 120 days later and the multiplayer didn't work. That is completely fucking unacceptable. I mean, that is the example of how not to handle a game release. Game release. I can guarantee you that during the entire 120-day period that was actually happening, that 343 was probably on a conference call daily with Microsoft saying, why the fuck isn't it fixed? I'm sure that they were in the fire constantly on this. To be fair, guys, they did eventually get it fixed, and it is pretty awesome. It's a really cool box set, especially for $60, 4 Halo games. What a bargain. That being said, I am pretty darn positive that Microsoft has made it very, very clear to them that Halo 5 is going to go off without a hitch, period. That they are probably working from now until the release of Halo 5 around the clock to make sure that this goes buttery smooth when this thing's released. They cannot afford this to get fucked up again. That would just be devastating. So Halo 5 needs to be a home run. And I've said from the beginning, Tyler, that all the Xbox One really needed to really close the gap between it and the PlayStation, they needed one solid home run, like one really good release that was like the console seller basically, like one epically awesome game that everyone was talking about that would make people buy it. Is Halo 5 going to be that? I honestly don't know. I hope so. I'm a huge fan of the Halo franchise. This one looks good. It's cool that there's another protagonist besides the Master Chief. That being said, over to the Sony camp, Sony has one coming out this year that might actually make me buy a PS4. I might buy it just for this one fucking game. Until Dawn, I think, looks amazing. I think that this might be one of the next evolutions of video games. Like this whole, you're playing a slasher movie, and when someone dies in the game, they really die. Like that's it. You know, and it can end one of, like, I think they said 20 different ways or something like that. You know, and your choices in the game directly affect the outcome. There are no hollow choices. Like, you know, you choose to run, things go one way. You choose to hide, things go another way. You choose to attack the villain, things go one way. You choose to run, they go another way. I mean, it's that is the kind of shit that I love. Like that kind of out of the box thinking where they're like, okay, we need to do a horror game, but let's do something completely different. I think that that's incredible, and it's such replay value because I will want to play it again to do things differently just to see how it turns out. You know, who lives, who dies, who gets the killer in the end, or maybe nobody kills the killer in the end. It almost reminds me of Cabin in the Woods. How we're the architects this time of the game, like we're engineering the outcome of this slasher movie. I think that that's absolutely amazing. So, in closing, and we'll get to Tyler's statements on this. I think it's going to be a very heated battle as far as who's going to be declared the victor of this holiday season, whether it's going to come down to Sony or Microsoft. I think it's going to be very close because they're both definitely, at least on paper, bringing their A game. They're bringing out the heavy hitters for, you know, to see who can declare themselves, you know, the victor this fall / this winter. So either way, guys, us as gamers, we win. There is no downside of competition. We get the best shit. So Tyler, I'll turn it over to you. What do you think, buddy?
Well, I think PS4 definitely is winning right now.
Yeah.
But I would say pretty much the entire console war at this point in time is only between Xbox and the PlayStation.
Yeah.
The Wii U is just pretty much out of it at this point. They're already giving up on it. There's going to be some great games released for the Wii U, but we're going to have to wait and see what this new NX is, and what their new version of a home console is going to be. But I'm really impressed that Xbox basically picked itself up. They had so many missteps, right at the beginning with the DRM.
Yeah.
And going through the Kinect, all the TV stuff,
Yeah.
just there were so many things that they had problems with, and definitely all the goodwill they got from the last console generation with the 360.
Yeah.
I believe the 360 pretty well outsold the PS3
not even close.
in North America.
Yeah.
But I definitely think that having the Xbox do better would be better for competition between both of them. Competition definitely gives us, like, the consumers definitely the beneficiary of good competition. So I'd like to see both of them do well. Sony's doing great right now. They definitely have some great games coming out, but a lot of those great games aren't coming out till next year.
Yeah.
Uncharted is one of my favorite series. Definitely can't wait to play it, but we've got to wait till next year to play it. I saw that The Last of Us was actually going to get a sequel, or they were talking about a sequel for it. I can't wait for that because that was one of the greatest games I've ever played. Was The Last of Us, a great post-apocalyptic game from Naughty Dog. I love that game, but so PS4 is doing great. Xbox has definitely made some right steps this year. It feels like we're finally getting into this console generation. last year before, there were still a lot of ports of Xbox One games on the older system. So
Yep.
I felt like they weren't really working hard enough to push the graphics capabilities of the
Sure. Sure.
PS4 and Xbox One because they still wanted to port some of these games to the older systems. So now it feels like we're really getting a lot of developers to focus on
Absolutely.
these platforms. So,
I actually have a question I want to pose to you, and then
mhm.
I'll jump in my 2 cents. Okay, so as previously announced at E3, Microsoft had said that they're working on backwards compatibility and they're going to add titles to the roster each month. Obviously, to guys like Tyler and I, we don't give a shit because we both still have our Xbox 360s and we don't get rid of consoles. So to us, ultimately, it probably doesn't matter. In your opinion, Tyler, how much do you think that's actually going to matter to people who aren't like us, like your average gamer who, would trade in his Xbox 360 to get his Xbox One? How much of a difference do you think that that would make for them as far as will I buy an Xbox One?
As far as them focusing on the newer systems
Yeah.
more than the old,
Do you think this would be a selling point? Like if someone had a PS4 and they were kind of on the fence about the Xbone, and do you think the backwards compatibility thing would push them over the edge?
well, I know that there is a limited amount of games that were announced right now.
Yeah.
I definitely think it's a bonus for Xbox to have backwards compatibility with those games.
Sure.
I don't know if it's necessarily a selling point. To me, selling points are exclusive games that you can only get for that system.
Agreed.
For most of our games right now, are cross-platform games. If you're a Halo junkie, you've definitely got to have an Xbox. If you're
Yep.
an Uncharted junkie, you've got to have, Sony PlayStation 4. I think Microsoft did something really good this year when they got exclusive rights on the new Tomb Raider. I was a huge fan of that Tomb Raider reboot.
Hmm.
And, for people that want to play it right when it comes out, that might push some people to buy, systems, with them. And Sony definitely had some great exclusives with, now they're going to have Shenmue 3. They're going to have The Last Guardian, which we always knew that was a Sony exclusive. But, they definitely have some cool stuff that's going to be exclusive to them now.
Yeah,
Um,
they've got Call of Duty now. So
What about Gears of War? The last one was released on 3 was released on PlayStation 2,
well,
wasn't it?
technically Judgment was the last one, which was not Gears of War 4 because it was a prequel, but
Okay.
yeah, but no, it's all Xbox.
Okay.
Microsoft owns the rights to Gears of
They
War.
did actually buy it.
Yeah.
Okay. And so I mean, Microsoft's got some great exclusives coming this year. So, I definitely think that it's moving to the direction of, you definitely want to have each system. I try and have each system just to play those exclusive games because with Nintendo you're only going to be able to play Mario or Metroid or whatever on the Nintendo systems, and
Agreed.
so I'll be getting whatever new Nintendo console comes out next just
Oh,
to play
I
those.
will.
But I hate that that happened with Nintendo. I was hoping that Nintendo was going to be right in the middle of the pack with the Wii U, but I think that's why it's so important to have exclusive big launch games when they come out. Nintendo pretty much had new Super Mario Brothers, Wii U, which how many new Super Mario Brothers games have we gotten here? Back to back when that came out.
Yeah.
And they had the Nintendo Land and they had a few others, but pretty weak launch title, with the Wii U, and then they didn't have anything for months and months and months.
The
And
problem was that like the third party support for the Wii U was at almost zero. Apparently, it was so hard to program for, and you had to incorporate the gamepad and all this other stuff. And developers were just like, "It's not cost effective. Like, it's going to cost
right,
us so much money to do this. We can't do it." So, I think Nintendo's smart enough to learn their lesson from this to say like, okay, it's cool that we like build new technologies that games can incorporate, but we can't make that the gauntlet that people have to endure in order to make games for this. Like if they want to incorporate it, they can, much like the Kinect, for example. The Kinect it was an add-on for Microsoft. Like you didn't have to use it, but you could program for it. Like Skyrim, for example, made an incredible use of it, where you could do the themes, out loud,
Right.
but you didn't need them to play the game. You could just make a cool game, and the only limitations you're working with are the hardware limitations. So you can make the best game possible.
They had a lot of stuff stack up against them with the Wii U because you lost third party support, which that's huge
Yeah,
on that. That probably was the nail in the coffin on the Wii U. It was hard to develop for, which is why they lost third party support. And whoever does the branding at Nintendo needs to be fired
yeah. It's a
because
stupid name.
it
It
is.
should have been
I mean,
called
how
its
many?
own system.
If you're not a pretty hardcore gamer,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure kids probably some of them would know the difference, but how many parents do you think walked in the store that year and was like, "Oh, that's just an updated version of the Wii. I've already got a Wii. I don't need it." And they do the same thing with the 3DS. This newer 3DS, it's called the new 3DS. I mean, how many parents are going to walk in the store and be like, "I've already got a 3DS," And
I agree.
all those new 3DS games are going to be you can't play them on it on a regular 3DS. And granted, there's not that many new 3DS games right now,
Right.
but I mean it's very vague. The packaging, it looks just like the normal. I mean, you have to look for a new on it. I have a box right there, and I mean, you wouldn't know that from a regular 3DS. Hold them side by side. Unless you saw the new right above 3DS, and I just think Nintendo's branding has sucked here for a while.
I agree.
I think that's hurt them a lot.
Well, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that with the passing of Iwata, which was definitely a sad day in the hearts and minds of all gamers, because this is the guy who created so many of these things that we love. Like half of Super Smash Brothers wouldn't exist if it wasn't for him. So, we definitely give him all the credit in the world. But I will say this: business-wise, I think the passing of him might be the best thing to ever happen to Nintendo, because the legacy and this kind of old school traditional, I mean, I don't know what else to call it other than very Japanese mindset of, we can't change on this, we have to do this, I hope is going to die with him. And Nintendo can move forward as a company and be like, okay, yes, we're the third console maker here. We may never be as big as Microsoft or Sony, but what we need to focus on, we need to do what they're not doing. Meaning we need us to stand out, where people who have an Xbox One or who have a PS4 are okay with that, but we need to make it so that our console is something that they absolutely must have along with that. Meaning we need to do what Nintendo does best, focus on the games. I mean, let's be honest here. Nintendo has the best first-party titles of any company ever. As far as the sheer number that they put out that are exclusive to the console, no one has ever come close. Every first party title they put out is pretty much gold. It's always, not buggy or anything like that. It's always really well done. It always plays really well.
And how many companies can sell you the same game
I know.
over and over and over
For
like
30
Nintendo
years.
does?
Like,
Right.
yeah,
I
we got
mean,
the new Mario. Yeah, we got the new Metroid. Yeah, we got
I
the
mean,
new Zelda. And it
well,
doesn't get
but
old.
I will say Metroid is the one of the few exclusive titles that Nintendo has where every story is different and it follows a actual storyline. There's actual timeline where each Metroid happens in the Metroid universe. But as far as Mario goes, Mario is always saving Princess Toadstool from Bowser or whoever. It's pretty much the same story through the years. And you go along to Zelda. Zelda's one of my favorite games, but it's the same game over and over again. Link is always a vague hero through Hyrule's history that is called upon in a time of need with the Triforce. And I mean, I just got done playing a Link Between Worlds, and it's pretty much the exact same story as Ocarina of Time. It's just, different stuff happens in different places, but, I had to collect the three gems to get the Master Sword, just like in Ocarina of Time. Then you have to save all the sages, to actually get to Ganon and fight him. And I mean, it's the same story, but only Nintendo can do that. And, please don't misunderstand what Jimbo's saying about. He's not saying he's happy that Iwata passed away or anything
No,
like
not at
that.
all. Not at all. I'm
He's
just
saying that, maybe as a company,
yeah.
this will, I guess, provide like a more modern business model like
Yes.
some of the other companies do. So I don't want anybody to misunderstand
No,
that.
no, no. I was very bummed
Yeah.
when I heard that. So I was like, wow, dude, this guy's like responsible for like 50% of my childhood.
Oh yeah, great games. He created Balloon Fight, or was one of the main developers for Balloon Fight.
My favorite black box title. If I had to
Uh,
pick one, that's my favorite.
I believe he created Kirby. Did he? Didn't he?
He had a very, very strong hand in creating
In
Kirby.
Kirby, yeah. So
So,
I mean, he had such. He actually had a hand in Earthbound, a very heavy
yep,
hand in saving that game.
yep,
So one of my favorite games of all time. So we're big Iwata fans, but
definitely.
we're definitely sad he's gone. But maybe this will be a new chapter for Nintendo, even better chapter for Nintendo.
I think so.
So we'll see. We'll see how that goes along.
Definitely.
We had one more question. Kid Shuriken wants to know, what are the game or games that got us into gaming, and when did you actually start collecting? And what is a game that greatly influences you? So that's a kind of a three-part question there. If you want
He
to
snuck
tackle
those
that
in.
behemoth.
Okay, so what are the games that got me into collecting? When did I start collecting? And what was the third part?
What is a game that greatly influences you?
Okay. Um, let's see. What is the game that got me into collecting? Well, I'm as far as what I'll consider true collecting, I'm fairly new to that. That's within probably the past few years of my life where I really got actively into collecting. I've been into video games themselves, as in owning and playing them since I was 5. And that there has never been a period in my life where I have not done that. I have owned every single Nintendo console ever, with the exception of the Virtual Boy. I have paid for every one of them with my own money. Even at age 7 years old, I saved up, the $100 I needed for the NES and bought it with my own money. So, as far as like actual collecting, I would have to say within the past 5 years, meaning taking it to the degree that you see behind me, where I'm actively pursuing particular franchises, particular runs of games, stuff like that. Very, very recent. Um, okay, so which part of it am I leaving out? Oh,
Um,
which game influences me?
right.
Okay. Um, Man, that's a really good question, dude. Like, as far as influences me, like inspires me.
I know you're a big Bomberman fan. Did that
Yeah, I
start
mean,
at an
like,
early age,
I feel
or?
like I'm beating a dead horse with that one, but yes, anyone who has ever watched anything on my channel knows that I'm probably the world's biggest Bomberman fan. There's a Bomberman shrine over on this side of my room with a little GameStop kiosk with almost every Bomberman game ever made. It has the framed Nintendo Power cover with Bomberman on the cover. I'm only missing probably two or three of the major releases. Other than that, I've got all of them. That one I've been into since I was probably 12. When I played Super Bomberman was the first one I ever played, and I just kind of fell in love with it, man. I loved the aspect of strategy and everything. It was something I could play with my friends, and it was just fun. And it's something I've said, I've gone on record and said in several of my videos. A lot of people have asked me, why do you love Bomberman so much? Like, what makes it unique? It's the only franchise that I can collect on every single console that I own, with the exception of the Xbox One. And we're talking all the way up to the Xbox 360 and including the TurboGrafx. There's at least one Bomberman title on, let's see, the Dreamcast, the NES, the SNES, the N64, the Saturn, the TurboGrafx, the Turbo Duo, let's see, Game Boy, Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance, the DS, the Wii, the Wii U, well, technically not the Wii U, the Xbox 360, PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2, every single console I just named has at least one or more Bomberman games. And I challenge you to find another franchise that you can say that about, because even if you found one, I will guarantee you there will be one holdout. It won't be on the TurboGrafx. That's pretty much what's going to seal it, because there's only 95 US releases. So that, I would say, would probably be for collecting, at least. I hope I'm answering your question, Kid Shuriken. Well, as far as what game influences me and inspires me to collect, Bomberman would, bar none, be at the top of my list.
I think for me, what got me into gaming, I got into gaming at a pretty early age, but we never really had our own home console. Um, we had a hand-me-down Atari 2600 from my cousins, and this was, pretty far into the NES run, and we're sitting there playing Atari. We had two games, Combat, and we had Pac-Man. And, so it was pretty tough going those first few years of gaming. But what we did most of our gaming on at an early age was we had an IBM Tandy computer.
Nice.
And it did the old like 5.25 inch floppy disk. And my dad had I guess it was a subscription to a company that I guess put out these discs, and it had programs on it. A lot of the discs had games, so I remember playing my first dungeon crawler on that. I remember playing Meteors on that, which was basically asteroids knockoff. But we played a lot of King's Quest back then, the old adventure games on the computer. So we played a lot of that, and my first real system that I got on my own that really got me into gaming, I would say, would be my Game Boy that I got back in the day. And I got it for my birthday, and the first game I got for it was Dr. Mario, and I love that game. Great game on the Game Boy. And the second game I got had the coolest cover on it. And I was like, I've got to get this game. It looks so cool. And it was Metroid 2. And that's what started the love for Metroid. Played that game, finished it up, and I was hooked after that. So that's where my start in gaming came in. We never had a Super Nintendo growing up, so I got into the Super Nintendo later on. In high school, but the next system after that was the N64, and one of my first games for that was Ocarina of Time, and that's where my love of Zelda came from. Great game. I got that for Christmas, and I remember opening it up and playing it Christmas morning. A lot of good memories from that. But as far as like when I started collecting, I remember in high school playing some video games, and we always used to borrow a friend's Sega Genesis and play a lot of like Mortal Kombat and stuff like that. And my mom would take me to Blockbuster, and we would rent games and stuff for the Sega Genesis. But we were all sitting around, and I was like, I'd really like to have a Sega Genesis and go back and play some of those old games. So we went to a local game exchange, and I got a system. I got some of the games, and that's really where I started collecting. I would go up there, every so often and get new games for my Sega Genesis. And then this was back in probably 2000, 2001. And then we started buying up everybody locally's old video game systems and stuff like that. And we would cherry pick what we wanted, me and my buddy Tyler would, and get rid of the rest, sell it or whatever. And so I guess over the course of about 10 years, I really started collecting at that point. Mm-hmm. But as far as like games that greatly influenced me, definitely Metroid. I mean, that's obvious with my channel, but I love The Legend of Zelda. As far as like newer games, I definitely love The Last of Us. Journey was a great game. That's one of the greatest games I've played probably in the past 5 years, and it's pretty short. It's 3 hours or so. Um, but it's that and Metroid. I'm trying to think of some others. Earthbound, definitely a great game, but I think that pretty much answers all of that question. That was a behemoth of a question,
Yeah, it was. I do have a
but
recommendation for Kid Show Ryuken, who can, if you want to hear me elaborate a little bit more on this and hear a really, really cool gamer collecting story that I think any game collector can identify with. There's an episode of my show, Retro Game Hall, I put out called My Treasures Restored, that I very strongly recommend to you. I don't want to spoil what's in it, but I tell you a little story that does have an incredibly happy ending that I think every game collector and anyone who grew up in our generation will absolutely be able to identify with. So if you have a second Kid Show Ryuken, check it out, man. I guarantee you it's going to be tugging on your heartstrings, buddy.
um, I think that's pretty much it, Jimbo. Definitely want our listeners to keep sending us questions so we can
Definitely.
definitely keep answering them for you.
You can hit us on YouTube. You can hit me over on Facebook. I have an official page, the Jimbo channel page. Feel free to submit questions there, guys. I post to that page all the time with new videos, fan questions, all that other stuff. You can contact Tyler through YouTube.
Facebook has
Facebook.
there's a Metroid's Prime. Well, actually, it's changed now, but actually, I'm going to since Facebook started doing the where you have to actually put in your real name. I actually started a page, and I'm going to rename it the Nerd Bucket Podcast page.
Awesome.
So it'd be great if you guys would send your questions there. That way we could easily catch them instead of having to look at the comment. I mean, definitely want comments on the videos, but it'd be easy just to where we don't have to filter through all those comments, to find the questions.
Absolutely.
But yeah, definitely check out Jimbo's channel on YouTube, the Jimbo channel, and my channel, Metroids Primed. That's plural Metroids. But definitely check out our channels, our videos, and we'll be back next week with another podcast for your listening pleasure.
Can I throw
You
in
got anything else?
one really quick thing? Well, hopefully we'll make this a recurring segment. It's really, really quick. We'll call it Jimbo's Laser Pick of the Week. Guys, I'm a Laserdisc collector.
Oh, nice.
Oh, God. Yeah, that's right. Masters of the Universe. Dolph and all his, roided up blonde mullet having shitting on my childhood in a movie. Because this is such a fucking bad movie, but it's still fun. And I still
I
love
loved
it.
it.
So.
As a kid, we loved that
Oh
movie.
yeah, as as a kid we didn't know any better. We're like, yeah, it's
Right.
fucking awesome. Now we look at it, it's like that had nothing to do with He-Man. It
I
really
have
did.
the power.
And he's He-Man all the time in this. We don't get to see a single transformation. What the fuck?
Right.
But yeah, this is Jimbo's Laserdisc pick of the week, to be continued next week.
Nice. All right, guys. Well, I think that's going to wrap it up for this episode.
Absolutely.
Definitely keep checking in with the Nerd Bucket Facebook page, and hopefully we'll have a link for the Apple podcast this week on the iTunes store. So if we do get it up, be sure and leave some reviews for us so we can get the word out about the podcast. But thank you so much for listening.
Thanks, guys.
And until next time. All right, Jimbo.
All
Later,
right,
man.